Silence needs no answers. In a remote monastery nestled among the mountains, there lived a young monk named Kai. Every day, Kai searched for answers to the questions stirring within him. He asked his teachers, debated with fellow monks, and studied ancient sacred texts. Yet, he still felt an emptiness that no words could fill. One day, while walking alone through the temple garden, Master Ryu approached silently. They sat together beneath an old tree, where the wind barely moved the leaves. Ryu remained silent for a long time. Kai, restless and eager, finally broke the stillness. "Master, why won't you answer me? Don't you have the answer to my question?" Master Ryu smiled gently and replied, "Silence needs no answers, Kai." Kai furrowed his brow, puzzled, still unable to grasp the meaning behind those words. Kai stared at the master, trying to grasp the hidden meaning behind his words. Silence wrapped around them like a warm blanket, and the distant murmur of the river seemed to whisper secrets without a single word. "But master," Kai insisted, "if there are no answers, how will I ever find the truth? How will I understand what troubles me?" Ryu closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them again with quiet clarity. "The answers you seek through words," he said, "are like drops of water trying to fill the ocean. But the ocean is silence, Kai. It doesn't need your drops. It simply is." Kai felt a strange flutter in his chest, a quiet whisper within him that he could sense, but not yet fully understand. That afternoon, Kai decided to walk into the nearby forest. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, painting the ground with golden patches and dancing shadows. As he walked, his steps grew slower, and the noise in his mind began to soften. He reached a clearing where an old oak tree stood tall and majestic. Kai sat at its base and closed his eyes. For the first time, he wasn't searching for answers or understanding. He simply allowed the silence to fill him completely. In that silence, without words, without explanations, he felt a deep peace he had never known before. He realized, even if he couldn't fully explain it, that sometimes we don't need answers at all. We just need to be in silence. The next day, Kai returned to the temple with a new calm in his heart. He walked over to Master Ryu and, without saying a word, sat beside him beneath the old tree. Ryu watched him quietly, recognizing the change in his student. "Have you understood, Kai?" the master asked gently. Kai nodded slowly, without rushing, letting his words flow like a quiet river. "Silence isn't empty, master. It's a space where everything can exist without needing to be explained. In that space, questions and answers simply dissolve." Ryu smiled, and without saying another word, stood up, leaving the silence to keep speaking for them. In the days that followed, Kai began to practice mindful listening to silence. In the voice of the wind, in the whisper of the trees, in the stillness of the mountains. He discovered that within those wordless spaces, his mind found rest, and his spirit, clarity. One afternoon, a visitor arrived at the monastery, burdened by questions much like those Kai once carried. He approached Master Ryu, his voice filled with urgency. "Master, how can I find answers to my doubts when the world is full of noise and confusion?" Ryu looked at him calmly and replied with just a few words, "Silence needs no answers." The visitor frowned in confusion, but chose to stay and watch. The visitor, whose restlessness had been his loyal companion for years, began to notice a quiet shift within himself. He no longer searched with the same urgency. He no longer asked questions at every turn. Simply walking the monastery paths, hearing the wind rustle through the trees, or watching a single leaf drift gently to the ground invited him to stay present. Each morning, he would sit quietly by the pond, where the lilies opened to the sun without a sound. He watched as the water reflected the sky effortlessly, not trying to understand, simply mirroring the moment. One night, while everyone slept, the visitor climbed a nearby hill. The sky stretched wide and deep above him, covered in stars. There was no need for words. He lay down on the damp grass and gazed into the infinite. And there, in the heart of that vast silence, he understood something that needed no explanation. The universe owed him no answers. And yet, everything he was, his doubt, his search, his breath, made perfect sense in that moment. When he returned to the temple at dawn, his steps were lighter, his shoulders less burdened, and in his eyes shone the quiet light of someone who had begun to remember something that can never be taught. Kai noticed that light. He had seen it before, reflected in the eyes of Master Ryu, and now he saw it in the visitor. It was the gaze of someone who had begun to make peace with mystery, who no longer demanded that life speak in sentences, but had learned to accept its secret language: silence. That afternoon, the two of them walked together through the stone garden. They didn't exchange a single word. There was no need. Each step was a soundless conversation. Each glance, a quiet revelation. Kai remembered how he used to worry over not understanding, not finding. He recalled the anxiety of needing clear answers, solid conclusions, unshakable certainty. But now he had learned to breathe within the unknown, to live in the space between question and answer without fear, the way one rests in a darkened room, knowing there is nothing to be afraid of. From a distance, Master Ryu watched them. He did not intervene. He offered no praise, no correction. He was simply there, like the tree, like the sky, like silence itself. And in that shared moment, without words, Kai and the visitor understood. Silence is not an absence, but the most complete presence there is. It needs no answers because it already holds everything that truly matters. Months passed and Kai became a serene monk, not because he had all the answers, but because he had learned to live with the questions without clinging to them. He understood that silence is not an empty void that needs filling, but a space full of meaning, a refuge where the soul can rest. One afternoon, sitting once again beneath the old tree, he remembered the first times he had arrived at the monastery with a restless mind full of doubts. Now, those doubts no longer disturbed him. They had ceased to be a knot tightening his chest and had become a river flowing freely, a gentle echo inviting calm. Silence had taught him to listen beyond words, to find peace in the absence of noise, and to realize that not all questions need answers. Some only need to be met with presence and acceptance. Kai smiled, took a deep breath, and gave thanks to silence, that invisible teacher who doesn't respond, but speaks with the oldest, deepest language of all, the language of being. And so, in stillness, Kai understood that silence needs no answers because, in truth, it is the answer.